And welcome to another edition of the Mojobreak Dugout Session. Cody here, and with me today, it's Dan to talk about some baseball. And to put it lightly, it was a tumultuous week of baseball over the last week. We're going to get into the trade deadline. We're going to get into the Contenders as we are now in the final month of the baseball season. But I think, Dan, we do got to start it off by acknowledging what a eventful week it was in the game of baseball. Another round of COVID scares where the A's are still not playing. The Oakland Athletics and the Seattle Mariners were supposed to be playing a 3-game set. They're not playing. And of course, the world of sports and our daily lives all collided over the last week when it was all spearheaded by the Milwaukee Bucks, who formed a sort of wildcat strike and decided not to play, and the NBA followed suit, and then Major League Baseball, much of Major League Baseball followed suit in what was a moment that I think the sports world is not going to forget. It was really an unprecedented and a pretty incredible moment to see the sports world really come together for these social issues and to fight for social change.
Yeah, Cody, we are in some crazy, crazy times, but you gotta be fortunate to still see some baseball. There's basketball going on, hockey playoffs are going on. I actually think there was some hockey games that the players actually protested and didn't play as well. So they jumped on board. They were a little late to the party, but they still made their presence felt. But yeah, I mean, we just basically, it's crazy to think that it feels like it's April and baseball has just started, but we're actually at the tail end of it, and we're in the last month of baseball. It's hard to wrap your head around what is actually happening, and we had a trade deadline that happened in the last day of August.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, this is such a strange time for so many reasons. Just to put a button on what happened last week, it was, like I said, unprecedented, incredible to see what happened and to see all across the sports world athletes use that this moment to say something. And it came to the timing for baseball was really something that Jackie Robinson Day was going to be celebrated across Major League Baseball. And so for players to be using that moment and use that time to call for social change, for racial justice, for social justice was a pretty incredible moment. But to speak to what you were talking about, just a bizarre feeling that on August 31st, we have the trade deadline. And of course, I'm we got 2 weeks until football. I'm not even in that mode right now. We got playoff basketball, playoff hockey, but let's talk about that trade deadline, which was one of the most active trade deadlines that we've ever had, which I don't know about you, Dan. I'm pretty shocked that it was as active as it was, seeing that we've only got less than 30 games left for these trades to even make an impact on the 2020 season.
A part of me, I understand what you're saying, but the other part is there's so many teams that are still in the hunt. With the expanded playoffs, a lot of teams are like, we have a shot at this. We can get hot at the right time. Maybe we're missing one piece. Maybe we're missing two pieces. Maybe we need a little bit of bullpen help. That'll put us over the edge. You look up and down, and I think the Pirates are pretty much in the cellar there. I think they are the only team that you basically would look at and go, well, they may not have a shot. But you look up and down every division, and everybody's got a shot to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of came from two sides where I thought, one, as you mentioned, everybody's in it. Even a team like the Washington Nationals, which right now, defending world champions, but Strasburg is hurt for the rest of the year. They're 12-19 or something like that, entering today as we record this, and that would be any other year, you're out of it, but even they're in it. So everybody is still kind of in this thing. So it made for a strange deadline. But the other part of me thought, with COVID and all the irregularities that come with that and all the nervousness that comes with that of moving to a new city, to moving to a new town, is already a lot to ask of a baseball player. But then to do that when you've got the pandemic still happening, there's a lot of things that I thought were going to be stopping this from being as big of a trade deadline as it usually is. But don't tell that to the San Diego Padres, who, my goodness, what a deadline for the Padres. Something like, I don't even know the number off the top of my head, but there was a 7-player deal with, I believe, the Cleveland Indians, a 9-player deal with the Seattle Mariners. I may have that mixed up, but nonetheless, a lot of players moving from team to team. And the Padres did this without having to give up many top prospects. The only major prospect, top 100 prospect they gave up was Taylor Trammell, a guy they didn't even draft, a guy they got, I believe, last year at the trade deadline. And in return, they're able to get Mike Clevinger, who is going to be part of that rotation at least for the next 2 years. Austin Nola, who's been a nice story for the Seattle Mariners, a catcher who now 30 years old, looks like he's made it, looks like a guy who could contribute to that team for a long time running. Trevor Rosenthal, a nice comeback story as he had a nice bounce back with the Kansas City Royals. Mitch Moreland, who has been a contributor, a great platoon bat for the Red Sox. All of these guys are heading to San Diego. It's a remarkable deadline that we're not talking about New York, Chicago. We're not talking about L.A. We're talking about the San Diego Padres as a team that said, let's take advantage of this moment. Let's go for it. And you know what? If I'm a Padres fan, I'm thrilled right now because these are trades that are not just going to help them right now. A lot of these trades are things that are going to help them in the long term.
Yeah, and the way I love how the Padres built it. They built it through making trades, trading away veterans, getting some prospects back, doing some great scouting, some great drafting. It reminds me a lot of what the Astros did, like them or not.
Yeah.
What the Astros did, 5, 6, 7 years ago when they were, trading for prospects and making great draft picks like Correa and Bregman and Springer and like those guys, and then filling in the pieces during the trade deadline, which looks very similar to what the Padres did. The Padres are all in. They have a great team. They have a great young team. They're definitely a team that I could see being around and being one of the better teams in that division. It is a good division. I mean, that's the thing that's surprising. I think the Diamondbacks are not playing bad. They're close to 500. The Rockies were unbelievable out of the gate. I think they were the best team in the division at one point. They've kind of tapered off a little bit, but still a good team. The Dodgers, we all know how good they are. And now you throw the Padres in there. So that division, unfortunately for the Giants, is going to be tough. They're going to have to try to keep up.
Half a game out of the wild card as we speak. Just saying. But
they're one of the surprises of Major League Baseball. I would say the Giants. I mean, they're doing it without their franchise player. They're doing it without Buster Posey. They're doing it with letting Bumgarner leave. Bumgarner's had some issues in Arizona, and I think he's hurt now, but there's no doubt that Bumgarner was a cornerstone in the front part of that rotation for years and would have been the opening day starter this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just am blown away by the Padres, what they've done. Love those uniforms, first of all. I think it's all about the uniforms. They changed the uniforms back to the brown and the yellow look, and look what's happened. It's like the baseball gods were trying to tell them something. I mean, you should have been sticking with that look the entire time. None of this like blue and white. Like, who cares? It's everybody that has got blue and white. But I think this team is here to stay for a while. I would also warn, Mike Clevinger, that was pretty much a done deal what happened in Cleveland. If you don't remember, Clevinger and Zach Plesac went out on the town after a game, broke protocol, broke their own sort of team-enforced bubble, and that really ended the relationship for Clevinger and his teammates. I think he has clearly learned. I've heard some interviews where he was talking about that. He regrets it all and wishes that he maybe said the right things, because even after that, he's kind of was being a little defensive. But I would just say that I love San Diego. The Gaslamp Quarter is a cool spot, so
absolutely
keep an eye out for Clevinger after the game. Just a quick walk to from Petco Park. just keep an eye out for him. It's he's a young man who wants to go out on the town. San Diego weather's always good. So anyway, I think he'll make the right decisions this time out.
I've been to both cities. I've spent time in Cleveland. I've spent time in San Diego. I personally would pick San Diego over Cleveland.
Yeah, I think even people from Cleveland might even pick San Diego over Cleveland.
Not hating on Cleveland.
Yeah, no offense, Cleveland.
San Diego is one of my favorite spots to go visit.
Yeah.
So, and like you were saying, that gas lamp district is very cool, and it's awesome because you truly can just walk down there after going to a game at. Is it still called Petco?
Still called Petco.
Because I know
they've kept it the same. Yeah,
they kept it the same. But if I'm not mistaken, a couple years ago they changed the configurations of that ballpark.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
and made it a little bit more hitter friendly because there was only one ballpark that was harder for hitters to hit home runs than AT&T Park. It was Petco.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. That's the strange thing about the NL West is you've got places that are just impossible to hit, like now Oracle Park, Petco Park, Dodger Stadium can be a tough place to hit, and then you've got launching pads with Arizona and especially Coors Field. Let's talk about a couple of other headlines for the trade deadline, and I think one of the big headlines to me is the teams that didn't really do much, specifically the Texas Rangers, who were front and center in a lot of trade talks. There was a trade involving Mike Minor, a guy who was an all-star for them last year. He goes to the Oakland A's. But the two other big names for this deadline, other than Clevenger, were Lance Lynn, who's having a great season right now for the Rangers, and I think even more surprisingly, Joey Gallo's name was being thrown around. And Gallo, I think, has at least 2 to 3 years more of team control. Lance has 1 more year of team control, and nobody was biting. Are you a little surprised if you're the Texas Rangers, which I don't see the Rangers being super competitive in that division for at least a while. The Astros still got a few more years. The A's, I think, still got a few more years. I think the Mariners are going to be on the come up sooner than we expect. Are you a little surprised that the Rangers didn't take advantage of this trade deadline, or is this just a case of, you just maybe wait till the offseason?
I'm definitely surprised. I think the issue with Gallo is probably going to be the asking price in return. If I'm not mistaken, he's a DH for the Rangers.
Yeah, plays left field as well.
Plays outfield,
yeah.
but primarily a DH. And, excluding this year, you don't know what is going to happen with the DH rule going forward. Is the NL going to take it full time next year? I know it's been pushed on, and definitely it's been a topic for the last 5-6 years. I don't know if they made a definitive decision yet on that. But if not, I don't think Gallo would be a good NL player. I think he would have to stay in the AL, so that would kind of limit the possibilities of where he would go. Plus, you don't know what the Rangers were asking for. But there's no doubt the dude's got pop.
Yeah, and I think something else that comes into play is this was supposed to be, before COVID, this was going to be the grand opening of their brand new field, Globe Life Field, with all of the pomp and circumstance that comes with that. And then obviously we all know what happens. Nobody's at the games. There may be a consolation prize that we talk about a little bit later about possibly this ballpark being the host of the 2020 World Series. But the Rangers, I think, are seeing next year as like, okay, now that's really our opening year. That's our true opening season. And if you trade a guy like Joey Gallo, in many ways the face of that franchise right now, a guy who can give you 40, 50 bombs if he's healthy, and if you trade him away, and Lance Lynn for that matter, what are fans going to have to come to the ballpark for, this brand new stadium? Obviously, the stadium will bring people in the first few months, but we don't have to look far here in the Bay Area. We know that only goes so far. Look at Levi Stadium the first few years for the 49ers, where the thrill of going to that stadium was fun, and then when the on-the-field product wasn't good, nobody cares. So I think that I think plays a big factor as well into why they hang on to Gallo, but who knows? Things could definitely change this offseason for the right price.
Yeah, you could only really market that new stadium for so long before the team needs to produce there. And I actually, we're not talking about football, but I actually got that vibe from Levi Stadium. It wore off quick. It was 1 year, and it was like, this team's not that good. And the following year, you saw a lot of empty seats.
Yeah, a place has got to be a really remarkable venue, I think, for it to keep bringing people in during those down years when it was it was AT&T, SBC AT&T Park, whatever it was called.
AT&T's always been very fortunate with I think its location. It's the fact it's it's on the water. They got some I don't know how many times I've been to AT&T and just had a great time walking around the stadium.
Yeah,
and just hanging out, grabbing a hot dog. It's just a great place to go hang out.
Yeah. So I think that plays a big factor. And the other part of that, too, is a lot of teams are maybe also not willing to pick up big contracts right now because the revenue streams, obviously, for this season are completely screwed up. And we don't really know about next season either. There's a lot of uncertainty going into next year. Is every ballpark going to be filled? Can they be filled, really, is the bigger question. So I think there is, for the team like the Rangers who want to hang on to Joey Gallo, it's like we need a guy there to bring butts in the seats, even if maybe our rebuild is extended a little bit because we didn't want to trade him, because the bottom line is a little more important right now than maybe a World Series chance, 3-4 years down the road. And for other teams, it's just taking that guy on who's due for big arbitration numbers. That's going to be just a little too much, knowing that the budget is going to be really, really tight for the next couple of years. So I think that really played a big factor for not only the Rangers, but for other teams that maybe didn't make that big move that they might have in a regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also comes down to the Rangers look at the teams that are above them, and it's like, are we going to try to compete with these teams right now? Are you going to try to compete with the A's? Are you going to try to compete with the Astros? I think that is definitely a factor as well.
Yeah. Let's go over a few other trades that I think are pretty notable. I mentioned Mike Minor going to the Oakland A's. The A's also acquired Tommy La Stella from the Los Angeles Angels. They traded former top prospect Franklin Barreto, who I believe he was the centerpiece for the A's side of the Josh Donaldson deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Trade. Yep.
So, boy, oh boy, you want to talk about closing that chapter. Now that he has been traded, is it safe to say that might be one of the worst trades in A's history at this point?
Oh man, there's been a fair amount of them now. So it's
the Carlos Gonzalez trade too to Colorado was because that also included Houston Street, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah. So that one might rank up there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was Cargo and. Was it Cargo and Houston Street?
Yeah, I believe so. They were packaged.
At that point, Cargo ended up being one of the most electric players for a couple years in the league. Not only just playing at Colorado, he did everything.
And Houston Street was closer for a National League champion team.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that happens for the Oakland A's. The Toronto Blue Jays were, I think, really surprising buyers at the deadline. Bo Bichette is hurt, so they went and picked up Jonathan Villar to take his spot for now. A very beat-up starting rotation right now. So they replaced 3/5 of their starting rotation. They get Taijuan Walker, who's finally living up to his top prospect potential from years ago. Robbie Ray, who's just having all sorts of problems this year, but we know he can strike guys out. And then as a last-minute move, they got Ross Stripling from the Los Angeles Dodgers. But I think the most intriguing move yesterday was the Miami Marlins. I cannot remember the last time the Marlins were buyers at the trade deadline. They went out and got the best position player available. They got Starling Marte, who is going to be a Marlin, I think, for at least another season after this. So to me, this doesn't just signal that, hey, this is a fun year. Let's try to extend this a little more than we expected. This is we're here. We're expecting to start competing as soon as next year, which I've just been so resigned to the Marlins never competing, being basically a quadruple A team in a Major League Baseball uniform. But I love it. I love that the Marlins went out and decided to be aggressive.
Jeter turning it around.
Pretty about to become the most loved man in Miami, which who'd have thunk it?
going back to the Blue Jays real quick, I was watching some highlights over the weekend, and they were playing at home. I'm so used to watching Blue Jays games in that dome.
Yeah.
And they're not in a dome.
Yeah, and
where are they playing? Is it Buffalo?
Yeah, Buffalo. I've seen a few when they hit home runs. You can see as they're going to left field, like you see the big freeway signs that says like Niagara Falls this way. So it really gives you a sense. Oh yeah, we're in Buffalo.
I was watching. Yeah, like I said, I was watching some highlights, and I'm like, are they playing at a minor league stadium?
They are indeed,
and it is. It looks like a minor league. It looks like actually a spring training facility.
Yeah, it does. They've done a pretty good job.
They've done a great job,
yeah.
But it's just you see highlights from certain teams and you just grow accustomed to seeing it in a certain setting.
Yeah.
And obviously not being spring training or Cactus League or Grapefruit League and seeing a ball go over the fence, you're just like, what is going on? Where are they? What is happening? So.
Yeah. Exactly. And you want to talk about weird, we had over the weekend, because of more COVID postponements with the Yankees and the Mets, that there was a 5-game series at Yankee Stadium, including 2 doubleheaders, and 2 of those games were Mets home games. And one of those was a walk-off winner for the Mets. So you're walking off at Yankee Stadium as the quote-unquote home team. So just as weird as it gets. It never ends this season. Speaking of those Yankees, they were surprisingly quiet at the deadline. They've had a ton of injuries. And the Los Angeles Dodgers, also very quiet at the deadline. We'll wrap up our trade deadline discussion here with, are you surprised that the big clubs, that the Yankees, that the Dodgers, basically stood pat at the deadline?
The Yankees, yes, because they seem in the last couple years they've had some major injury issues with Stanton. I think Judge is banged up again. I expected them to go out and maybe make a play for the guy we were talking about before, like Joey Gallo.
Yeah,
throw somebody in the middle of the lineup who's got some pop for when Aaron Judge or Stanton go down. That I expected them. The Dodgers. Watching them play the Giants and seeing how stacked that lineup is anyway, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. They're good.
I think they definitely didn't need anything else in their lineup. If that team can stay healthy, without a doubt, they're going to be a tough team to knock off in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think with the Dodgers, they are so good, so stacked, so deep, and really they made their deadline move with the call-up of top prospect Gavin Lux. So to me, that is them making that big deadline move, that they bring him up and see what he can do over the next month, and if he lives up to that potential, he is as good as acquiring a huge bat at the deadline. I'm a little more surprised the Yankees didn't do anything. They really had a tough run of it over the last couple of weeks. 7 straight losses before a 3-game winning streak over the weekend. But I think they view it as once we get Judge, Stanton, all these guys back and healthy, that is as good as getting somebody like Joey Gallo. But you put that in my mind now. Joey Gallo in the same lineup as Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton would just be disgusting.
It'd be very Yankees of them.
Oh, it totally would. It would be peak Yankees.
But I think the Yankees, they didn't make a move, but I think they did call up one of their top pitching prospects.
Yes, they did.
Debbie Garcia.
Yeah.
So watch out for him. That guy, from what I've heard, has electric stuff. Absolutely has. I mean, triple-digit fastball. So, a lot of these teams may have not made moves, but they kind of dipped into their prospect and their farm system and pulled up some guys who are it's just as good as making a trade. You saw it a couple weeks ago with the Giants bringing up Joey Bart. You saw it last week with the Orioles bringing up Ryan Mountcastle. Yankees bringing up Debbie Garcia. So some of these teams not making trades, but they are bringing up some of their top prospects.
Yeah, I think that's, it's September. This is usually the time that we would be talking about September call-ups. These young guys who probably Joey Bart this year in a regular season would have been called up right now to see what he can do in 1 month of play, and some of those other guys you mentioned as well. So I think that is going to play a really big part and probably a big reason why teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers, who on top of everything else, they have all this money to work with, also have developed really good farm systems over the past few years, why they probably stood pat.
And they both made really good trades for other teams' prospects as well. So
yeah, exactly. So we are now entering the final month of the baseball season. The trade deadline is behind us, and let's talk about some of the favorites going into this final season. You got the graphic up there if you are watching us. If the season ended today, here's how we're looking in the National League. You've got the Dodgers playing the Rockies in the first round. The Padres play the Phillies. It's the Phillies who have been red hot and basically have an entirely new bullpen right now. The Braves will play the Marlins, and the Cubs will play the Cardinals, renewing that rivalry. In the American League, you've got the Rays and the Blue Jays. Cleveland versus Houston. The A's would take on the Twins, and the Chicago White Sox would actually host the New York Yankees right now. That White Sox team is, to me, if I'm rooting for a World Series right now, give me White Sox and versus the Padres. That would just be so fun.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think I said on an earlier podcast, I actually put a future bet on the White Sox winning the World Series. So I'm down with that.
Yeah. Rooting for that for a lot of reasons.
It was something crazy. I think it was 40-1 when I put the bet down. So
it's a good bet.
I very rarely do future bets like that, but I just looked at that roster and knowing that Robert, whatever you want to call him, he was going to be on the opening day roster.
Yep.
And the kid's electric. I think he had a walk-off homer over the weekend. And the surrounding cast on that team, that offensively, and you got guys like Giolito, who threw a no-hitter.
Yeah. Looked electric when he was doing it.
It's crazy how teams can just turn it around that fast with, couple good draft picks, couple good trades here and there, and just a couple good international signing, and you have the making of a dynasty.
And a lot of young guys who have been playing together, coming up together through the minor leagues. We saw Houston do it. We've seen a few other teams try that formula. Now Chicago is that next team to try to emulate the Astro formula, albeit maybe with a little less cheating, but they are definitely trying to follow that mold, and it seems to be paying off. Lucas Giolito looked electric the other day. So let's start with the American League. So the White Sox, is that going to be your pick then to represent the American League, or do you think it's going to be someone else?
That's my homer pick right now.
Yeah.
If I probably didn't place a bet on it, I probably would have said the Yankees on paper would be the obvious choice. I think in spring training, when we were all talking about this, I think it was a consensus that it was going to be Dodgers Yankees. Now I'm looking at White Sox and Padres.
I would absolutely love to see that. The team I would not discount right now, and I think a team that is made more for the postseason, is the Tampa Bay Rays. They currently have 3 starting pitchers, basically. That's it. And really, only one of them is doing really well. Tyler Glasnow had a terrific start last night in New York. Had a no-hitter, I think, through 6 innings. But right now they've got Blake Snell and then not much else. But I think there's enough talent there that in a 3-game series especially, do you want to face Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow for 2 of those 3 games? I know I wouldn't.
Yeah, and you're right. Like that, when it comes down to a series like that, if you have 3 top of the rotation type of arms, it's tough to win a series against those guys. So
yeah, They have as good a shot, I think, about as anybody. And that lineup is one of the most consistent in baseball. Brandon Lau might be the MVP of the American League right now. So I would not count out the Tampa Bay Rays right now. I think the Oakland A's still have a good chance. That bullpen has been lights out, but the starting pitching, even with the acquisition of Mike Minor, it does leave a little wanting. It doesn't jump off the page at me. Luzardo's been good, but there's a lot of guys underperforming with that team right now. So yeah, if I had to go with a choice of the two teams I think come out of it, I think Tampa and the White Sox. Heck, Lucas Giolito and the way Dallas Keuchel's been pitching for much of the season, wouldn't want to face them in a short series as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like that Rays pick. I mean, there's a real good chance. I mean, I like that. And you never know. I mean, it's such an odd season. A lot of players a lot of them, if it's a regular season, we've been like what, $120 under a belt at this point, $130.
Mm-hmm.
You got some guys starting to break down, some pitchers starting to break down, some hitters starting to break down. A lot of these guys seem to be pretty fresh right now.
Yeah, it's weird that this final month is like mid-season for a lot of these guys, where now they're just hitting their stride.
Yep.
I saw the Brewers are a team that I feel like is outside of the National League playoff picture right now, and they have guys like Christian Yelich is batting under 200. That's not going to last. He's going to have a much better September. I can pretty much take that to the bank. Christian Yelich will have a good September. He's too good, and he's not the only guy like that. There's a lot of other players like that throughout baseball who are usually on fire, usually among the best in baseball, and it's just not clicking. That's going to change, I think, in September, and this whole playoff picture, I think, is completely going to change before the season, we get to the postseason. And I say that, and I think, probably the Yankees just end up being the American League champions anyway, and we make all these fun, sexy picks, and then it's, just going to be like Yankees-Dodgers or something like that. So, oh well.
Yeah, I kind of expected to see some of those players like Yelich, and, I mean, players who've been in the league for 5, 6, 7 years. Baseball players are superstitious. They are creatures of habit. And when you put a season that doesn't feel or look like any other season that they've ever been a part of, you're going to see players struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you're seeing that with Yelich. He may have the worst 2 months of his career, but it's not going to define his career by any means. I truly expected this. That's why I think you see a lot of younger players who haven't been in the league and haven't created those habits and have certain situations like the traveling completely different, where they're playing completely different, no fans in the stands completely different. Like everything about this is different. So.
Yeah, and I think that it's something I said at the beginning of the season, too. As we move on, we'll talk a little bit about some of the National League contenders. Teams that are really young and don't know any better, I think, are actually going to do well this season. And I think that's been proven with teams like the Padres, teams like the White Sox, heck, teams like the Marlins, who it looked like their season was over the moment it started with the COVID outbreak, and they have taken that sort of that youth where they don't know any better, and then the whole COVID thing where it was like, well, now it's just like whatever happens. Let's just go out and play. We're just happy to even be playing, and they're just taking the ball and run with it. I think it's really benefited these teams that just are like, they're not in their heads about it because they haven't been playing at the highest level for that long. And let's talk about some of those National League contenders. As I mentioned, the Dodgers are the best team in baseball right now. There's no question about it. The Chicago Cubs have been very good in the National League Central. The NL East is kind of up in the air right now. The Braves got off to an incredibly hot start, but you've got the Marlins, you've got the Phillies, who've been a lot better. You've got the defending champions there who are at the bottom of the division, but Juan Soto's been on fire. I want to give something a nice, interesting pick here, but the Dodgers have been so far and away the best team. They are so well built. Their rotation is a completely different rotation from a year ago, but it's also guys who have been expected to be the next big Dodger pitchers. Walker Buehler's out right now, but you've got Dustin May there, and you've got a lot of interesting young players there. And, of course, Mookie Betts has totally lived up to the hype. So, to me, it's the Dodgers or bust in the National League.
Yeah, I jumped the gun. I thought I was going one for each league on the last one, so I apologize about that. So now I can basically bring up the fact that Padres is who I mean, after all the trades, young team, I'm pushing for them. I actually want to see a lot of those young players get a little bit of playoff experience under their belt, even if they don't go to the World Series, even if they don't win it all. Get them a little experience going forward in the next year. The Dodgers going to be a tough team to beat. I can't believe I'm going to say this being a Giants fan, but I'm actually pushing for Clayton Kershaw to have an amazing run in the playoffs.
Wow.
It's tricky. I like Kershaw. And I think he gets a bad rap. I mean, he's drafted by the Dodgers, signed an extension, going to be a Dodger for pretty much his whole career. I don't think he's going to leave anywhere. He is Mr. Dodger. Best pitcher in the league at one point. He probably on the back nine of his career now, but he's still amazing. As we saw him play against the Giants last week, and he basically shut him down because that's what he does. But he has this stigma in the playoffs that it's going to tarnish his career. It's going to tarnish his legacy if he doesn't get one. If he doesn't, and I mean, he has to do similar to what Bumgarner did for the Giants and just take the team on his back and be like, you guys are going to win a World Series, and it's going to be single-handedly because of me. I would love to see that for Kershaw.
He is pitching like a man on a mission right now for this season. When he's been on the mound and been healthy, he's looked really good. He's looked as good as he's looked the last few years. And, yeah, when he's ready to go for the postseason, I think he is going to be a different pitcher this time out. And I think a lot of the things that have sort of haunted him in his postseason career, at least for the last couple of years, were not entirely his fault. I point to last year when he wasn't he brought in? I think it was Game 5 I think it was Game 5 of the NLDS, and he was brought in relief. And it was this really curious move. Like, why are you throwing in Kershaw right now? This feels like a weird, it felt like a weird move for Dave Roberts to do that when he had very capable arms of the bullpen who are used to that sort of role. And there have been other times where, Kershaw maybe gives up the one big hit, but it's like, you look at the stat line, he still's like 6 or 7 innings. He gave up 2 runs. Like, you can't really ask for much else than that. But you're right. He's got to do something big in this postseason to kick that narrative forever.
I'm glad you brought up that Dave Roberts move. It was so curious that Dave Roberts almost lost his job.
Yeah.
There was rumors going around that Dave Roberts was going to get fired, and Dave Roberts was probably going to be the Giants' the new manager.
That's right.
Because I think without a doubt, if Dave Roberts gets let go, the Giants swoop him up, and he is the manager of the Giants.
No question. Yeah. Unless Gabe Kapler somehow takes this team to the playoffs next year or, heck, this year. I almost feel like that's a inevitability right now.
Yeah. But I remember, I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy how why would Dave Roberts put Clayton Kershaw in that position knowing mentally where he's been in the playoffs? It was almost like set up for failure.
Yeah.
But I would love nothing more for Kershaw to be able to put like all that behind him and really have a great performance in the playoffs. And I think if he does pitch lights out like he is capable of doing, the Dodgers are almost unbeatable.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It could have a very similar effect to like Strasburg last year, to a lesser extent Strasburg last year, but there were, for years, the Nationals can't win in the postseason. They have all this talent. Strasburg is this number 1 pick who we all remember the year that first year they went to the postseason with him, and they held him back, and it ended up costing them. So last year was sort of this redemption story for him to change the narrative, to change his story, to change his legacy. That will definitely be at the forefront of the Dodgers and Kershaw's mind, I think, in this postseason. But man, I really want that White Sox-Padre World Series. And I think MLB would like it too. Even though I'm sure they would like LA versus New York more for ratings, I actually think the higher-ups that be at MLB would actually be all for a Padres-White Sox matchup to showcase all the great young talent.
It would be so exciting, like you were saying, to see all that young talent. And, yeah, there would be probably some pretty bonehead plays in a World Series like that, some questionable base running and maybe some bad defense here and there. But there would be some amazing plays as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And like I said, I would like for both those teams to get into the playoffs, have a little bit of a run, and just get that playoff experience under their belt. So when they face it again, because playoff baseball, it's a whole different monster.
Yeah, they will call it the Big Game James World Series, all thanks to that one trade. That's why we're there. Oh, man, if only. That would be something. The White Sox, of course, traded Fernando Tatis to the Padres, and here we are.
Yep.
So the playoffs are going to be different this year. We did hear some reports as a couple stories here before we wrap things up. We've heard some reports. It hasn't been 100% confirmed, but Jeff Passan of ESPN, I think he was on the Pat McAfee show, and basically confirmed it, that MLB is exploring a bubble option, a la what the NBA and the NHL are doing. Probably more closely resembling what the NHL is doing, where there will be two different hub areas, not hub cities, where you will have the American League playoffs take place at Dodger Stadium and at Petco Park in San Diego. The National League playoffs would take place at the new Globe Life Field in Arlington and Minute Maid Park in Houston, and the World Series will be played at a neutral site, Globe Life Field in Arlington, as sort of a consolation prize for opening your brand new ballpark when absolutely nobody can come to the stadium. Well, hey, at least you get to host the World Series. I think this is a no-brainer for baseball to be doing this. It's apparently they're going to have the teams in hotels in the last week anyway, regardless if you're making the playoffs, just to be sure whichever teams do make the playoffs are isolated for that extra week until they can get the postseason started. I think it'll be fun to have a neutral site World Series for a year. I'm not sure this is something that is I would like very much in the future. I have seen some people throw it around that even in the future, maybe let's have a neutral site World Series. But I think for the meantime, this will be an interesting exercise for MLB. And I think they've got the right cities and the right ballparks chosen for this experiment.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good plan. It's a great idea. I mean, I could just imagine, like, your team makes it to the playoffs, and then unfortunately somebody on your team, and hopefully not like one of your marquee or a couple marquee players on your team, come down with COVID. I mean, your season's pretty much going to be over. They're not going to put the playoffs on pause for one team. They're just going to make you have to replace those players and just figure it out. That would be a bummer. That would definitely be a bummer. So I like the idea of having that bubble and just trying to keep everybody healthy and get through our season, and then maybe in 2021 get back to baseball regular and sports regular.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you've seen so many, even with what's going on with the Oakland A's right now, where I think it was like they are, as they put it in the press releases, over an abundance of caution, where it is not like these huge outbreaks like you were seeing, I think, earlier in the season, but baseball is learning on the fly, which, you can argue that, until it's forever and ever that they probably should have done a little more planning and not been doing this all on the fly. But you see that they are being a lot more strict about it, whereas maybe if this situation that's happening with the A's now happen in, let's say, July, maybe they wouldn't be postponing these games as much as they are. So baseball just wants to avoid that completely. Totally get it. And it'll be interesting to see the World Series at that ballpark in Texas, which I will just say right now, from the outside, is the ugliest looking thing in baseball. It is awful looking. Inside, it looks beautiful. As you can see a picture of it, we've got it up if you watch the video. But on the outside, just looks like this giant aluminum shed in the middle of Texas, and I'm not about it. I'm not into it.
So it is. I've actually seen it in person.
Okay.
So we were at, I think it was early February. We did an event with Topps, and it was a 1,000,000 card rip party, and it was basically launching 2020 Topps Series 1 baseball. And I don't know exactly. I heard rumors that initially it was going to be at the new Rangers Stadium, but it wasn't quite finished and ready to have people go in yet. So they basically had us do it at Cowboy Stadium.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and you can see it right across the way.
Which is basically right across the street. So at one point, we basically all kind of walked over and just walked around the new stadium and just kind of looked at it. It looked like a new stadium, but you're right. It didn't really blow me away. It wasn't like, walking by Petco Park or walking by AT&T or seeing like Fenway or Camden Yards, like those majestic, beautiful stadiums. Didn't have that vibe to it.
Yeah, I feel like to go off on a tangent about ballparks here, but that craze in the late 90s, early 2000s to like emulate an Ebbets Field style of like downtown ballpark, the brick facades and everything. Camden, Coors Field is like that. Obviously, Oracle Park in San Francisco. Why did we get away from that?
I have no idea.
That's such a good look.
It's a good question because all those parks that you mentioned
timeless,
are just amazing.
Yeah,
and those are the parks that, again, we were talking about this earlier, that even if the team is underperforming or a bad team, they're gonna get 40 to 50,000 people in all those ballparks on a weekend.
Yeah,
because it's just a cool place to go to, watch a game, and just take in the atmosphere.
I am going to go out on a limb. I'm going to blame the Marlins for this one. They started this whole, like, stadium of the future, like, very odd retractable roof that, like, comes out and, like, hangs over. It's the same look that the Rangers Stadium has, and I kind of liked the quirkiness of Marlins Park. I wish they had kept the home run statue in the middle of center field because it was so awful. I loved it, but I'm blaming them for the future of baseball parks. Everyone's emulating them now for some reason.
So,
big boxy.
Off the dome, unrehearsed, unscripted, what is the dumbest thing that you've ever seen in a Major League Baseball stadium? Like, in the way of construction.
Yeah. That Marlins thing is right up there. But I will say, as great as when it opened, as great as Pac Bell Park was it Rusty the Robot in right field? They had that big animatronic that was about 20 feet tall that would, when you made a great catch, would run out and dive and would act like he's hitting home runs. Horrifying. If you can look it up, it is the thing of nightmares. And I'll say, like, I'm a huge fan of like Disneyland and I love a good animatronic, but this thing was like an affront to God. It was awful. It was, as beautiful as that park was, that thing had to go immediately.
I gotta see it. I have no idea. I got it when we're done with this. I gotta see a video of it.
The company that made it still has a website and a whole informational page about it. I could not believe it. There's a YouTube video about it. So if you want to look it up, I believe Rusty the Robot, Pac Bell Park. Have at it.
Mine is. It was Minute Maid Field, and it was the hill.
The hill's the worst.
In center field.
Oh, God. That stupid hill.
I don't know whose idea that was. Obviously looking to tear some ACL, PCL, and MCLs running up a hill. I remember Dusty Baker telling his players, do not run up that hill and try to get a ball. If it is over your head, just wait for it to roll down to you. Do not run up there and try to catch a ball.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Just the gravity is going to roll down, and you might actually be able to play it off a little easier.
Because imagine if you're running full speed, and players are their heads down, they're running, and they're looking up at the ball. If you just start running and then all of a sudden you're just going up a hill, man, you're looking to tear something.
Exactly. It's amazing that more people did not get career-ending injuries from that thing. Wasn't there a flagpole in playing area?
It was, right? It was unbelievable.
For a little bit.
It was almost like it was a joke. They're just like, okay, what we're going to do is a hill would be funny to put in center field, and I could see a boardroom, and they're just like, yeah, that's hilarious. And then somebody wrote it down and just went out and did it. They're like, I was half paying attention, and I thought you guys actually wanted a hill in center field.
I mean, the list of things with that ballpark when it first opened, obviously the Crawford boxes are still there, and it's like, Little League Park. It's so close. I kind of like the train. It's a little kitschy, but I kind of like it. The hill was awful, but should we have expected great decision makings from the people who decided to name it Enron Field to start off with? Maybe not. Let's wrap things up with something I think that's going to affect the baseball card business here. A little bit of a news that kind of has gone under the kind of gone under the radar here, as it's been reported. Something that will be happening next year, the 2021 MLB Draft. This year, I was watching the draft probably more than I ever have, albeit there was nothing on TV for sports, but I was into it, and I think a lot more people were into it. So I think baseball is both capitalizing on that, and obviously the college baseball schedule might be a little bit different with college sports really in flux right now. So the MLB Draft has been moved up 1 month, and it's actually going to take place in Atlanta during All-Star Weekend. And I think this is a great idea. The All-Star Game is in Atlanta next year, and so you're going to have all of these top prospects during the day. I'm assuming they'll have the MLB Draft. You'll have all of these draftees, young players who are going to be at the forefront of the biggest week for baseball other than the World Series. And guys who are not only going to be on TV for a lot of fans who don't know them, but also be interacting with the best players in baseball over that whole week, which is just a cool thing for them and great experience. I think this is a fantastic idea. I think more exposure for this and more baseball taking advantage of the spotlight that they have in the middle of July, which is the most dead month of sports on the calendar other than Major League Baseball. And I think, too, to frame it for the hobby, I think that you are going to see guys that maybe were not as well known, or maybe were known to, you maybe get 2 or 3 or 4 really well-known names coming out of a draft. I think that number skyrockets now if you do this and do it every year, where there's a lot more attention, and I think it could be something really beneficial for hobbyists who are looking maybe for an even wider array of cards and of players to start to add to their collection early on.
I think it's a great idea. If I'm not mistaken, I think the week leading up to the All-Star Game, generally, depending on the city, is they usually have the type of fan fest deal where, like, they'll bring down memorabilia. They basically have a whole. I know they do it for. I know they did it for the NHL All-Star Game. I know when it was in AT&T, they have a whole week event where you can go just check out different things, different memorabilia. They have like some players come down who maybe they're just doing autographs and meet and greets and stuff like that. A lot of games for like kids and whatnot. I think it's a great idea. I think it's great to get more eyeballs on the draft. I think the baseball draft, unlike the football draft and the basketball draft, gets kind of lost in the shuffle of when it happens. I think the other drawback, and you can't really do anything about this, is that unlike baseball or unlike football and basketball, where the player gets selected, they're going to be generally on your team performing next year if they're a high pick. Where baseball, it's kind of the long play. Some of these kids are coming out of high school. They may have to go through the farm system for 3-4 years, so you may not actually see them on your team for 3 to 4 years. And I think that's just a drawback in the process of the MLB draft anyway. There's nothing they can really do about it. It's just, it's harder to get to the major leagues than, if there's, basketball only has 2 rounds. Baseball, I think this year was weird, right? It had 5 rounds.
Yeah, 5 rounds. I think next year it's going to 20 rounds, and I think they're trying to keep it a little smaller from here on out. Obviously, something we talked about a few episodes ago, minor league baseball is still on pace to be shrinking next year. There's going to be less teams in minor league baseball, so less teams equals less rounds where you're going to need to draft guys, less places you're going to have to put guys. So I think that 20-round number is probably something we're going to see not only next year, but maybe it goes up a little bit, but I think they want to stick around that number.
But another thing, we were saying was getting these draft picks to be able to hang out with the best players in the world at that event.
Yeah.
The being able to, it's going to be a heck of an experience for the players getting drafted to basically probably be able to go to the All-Star game and be able to probably meet the Mike Trouts and the top players in the league. It'll be a great event all around. I don't know why they didn't think about it before.
Yeah.
But it probably had. It's actually a weird timing in June as well, because if
College World Series is
happening. If I'm not mistaken, they basically do it right when a lot of these players are playing the most important games of their college career.
Exactly.
So you want to talk about a distraction. Think about if you're in the middle of the College World Series run and you're sitting there talking to your agent trying to figure out where you're going to go in the draft, but you're trying to focus on winning a national title. That's a lot going on for a kid who's 21.
And I think that maybe the NCAA might say, boy, doing this is going to take attention away from the College World Series, because such a big thing is, this guy is going to be drafted by the Tigers. He's going to be there next year. This guy's going to be on the Yankees next year. Let's watch him. But I think it might actually have the opposite effect, where there could be guys who were maybe a 4th or 5th round pick going into the College World Series, and then, like what happens during March Madness in basketball, a guy has a huge run in the College World Series, and suddenly that 3rd or 4th round pick becomes like a 2nd round pick or a 1st round pick because the national spotlight's on them. So I think it actually, if they play their cards right, if they do this right, they could make it like we're going to make stars in the College World Series more than has ever happened before, because these guys are already drafted and snatched up by the time the World Series is happening. And you also have a whole month of build-up where after that College World Series is over, we could have what basketball and football and all the other sports have always had when it comes to drafting, actual combines, actual workouts where you can invite the greatest players in college and in high school to all come to one place. MLB Network could air it if they want to, like the NFL does, where we can watch a baseball combine on TV to get us really hyped for the draft. I think this is a really good idea altogether. I'd say even go a step further to get people into the draft. If you're going to have it in July, why not have the ability to trade draft picks here? Let's finally do that, because now you're 2 or 3 weeks before the trade deadline. Imagine it's All-Star week or right after the All-Star game. You can actually trade draft picks now. So now the draft is not only all this young talent that we may know a little bit more about, have a whole month to really acclimate to these new names, but there's also the added incentive of maybe you hear about a big trade that happens in the draft. I would keep adding on, and if I'm baseball, see what you can do to really get eyes glued on the MLB draft during a time where there's nothing else. I'd
take it even a step further. I'd love to see, and they would obviously have to be able to sign their contracts, and I know there's sometimes there's an issue with baseball where depending on where they get drafted, it seems like there's certain players. I remember, I think Mark Appel was a top pick and he was drafted by the Pirates and didn't sign and ended up going back to college. And he actually played at Stanford, and he ended up coming out the next year, and he got drafted by the Astros,
Yeah,
and he did sign. So some guys, like, they can come out of the draft a junior, not like their slot where they got drafted, or the team that drafted them, they don't really see themselves as a good fit there, and go back to college, which is bizarre. Unlike any, I mean, you can't do that in basketball. You can't basically go into the draft and go, well, I got drafted by the Magic. I don't really want to play for the Magic. I'm going to go back for my senior year. Maybe something they should look at doing. But that's a weird thing with baseball that they do. I don't know why the Mark Appel thing just went in my head, but yeah, I would love to see like a home run derby with some of the top prospects at the All-Star game. So not only you're getting eyeballs and these kids are getting drafted by their teams, but you take some of the best hitters out of that draft, maybe the top 5 or 6, and you have a little extra home run derby to show their skills on the same stage as some of the greatest players in the world.
I would love that. That would be a really, really cool event if you could do that.
And then if you're a fan of that team that drafted, you get a little instant gratification taste of what this kid can do.
It could be something, you do it like right before the home run derby, where you could have just a shorter, like, hey, here are like the top 4 hitters or top 6 hitters, and they're going to do a quick home run derby or something like that,
very
or
similar
a hitting contest or something.
Yeah, very similar to the futures game.
Yeah,
but just do it with that year's draft picks. And
I love it.
I think it would be a blast for the players. It would be a blast for the fans. The fans would love it. It would be cool, and plus it would give you, like I said, a little taste, because you're probably not going to see this player on your team for 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. So it'll give you somebody to remember and watch through their farm system. So you can basically follow their career and be like, I remember I saw them at this home run derby. I'm going to see how well they're doing in the minors every year as they make their step to the bigs.
I think that's such a cool idea. I think just take, really reiterate what all of this is doing. Just take advantage of that moment in the sports calendar where, like, you are number one. And if you have something like that where you're building your sport for the future, somebody could watch some guy win the amateur home run derby, and then 4 years down the road, hey, I remember that guy. They're already in our minds, our collective mindset as sports fans. I'd go a step further. I've got my World Baseball Classic shirt on. I love that event. I think that when you have that, have the semifinals and finals during the All-Star week or like around that time, and just keep driving interest for this sport. You got to take advantage of that moment. So I think more stuff during that week, during that All-Star week, is a great thing, especially for the draft, where I think the possibilities are endless. And like I said, for card collectors, I think this is going to be a huge boon to have even more names that are known right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to wrap things up for this week's Mojobreak Dugout session. Remember to subscribe to Mojobreak Media on YouTube, where you're watching this right now. Subscribe to us for more podcasts, more clips, more stuff coming your way. Of course, we're also at Mojobreak Card Shop on YouTube. And, of course, all of your live breaks you can find over on the Mojobreak main feed and over on mojobreak.com. For Dan, I'm Cody, and we will see you next time on the Mojobreak Dugout session.